Thank you all for joining us, those of you who are here in person and those of you who are joining us virtually today. It is wonderful to see you all and to know there are also people online here. But to get started, my name is Samantha Silker. I'm the program director at the Center for Integrative Leadership at the University of Minnesota. Our center is a university-wide center connected to the business school, law school, school of public health, college of education, and school of public affairs. And we really focus on cross-sector leadership and collaboration, really working across those sectors of government, nonprofit, and business. And this event is part of our cross-sector collaboration series, really an opportunity to bring together the community and highlight different organizations and different cross-sector partnerships to both learn from them of the successes and the challenges. And as all you know, as you signed up to attend this event, we're really focusing today on Cub's community first approach and really learnings from the Northside Cub. So I'd like to just take a moment to have all the wonderful panelists that are joining us today, and we're here at the Northside Community Center. If you could each introduce yourself, and then we will get started on some questions.
Lisa. Okay, so I'm Lisa Clemons. I'm the founder and director of the Mother's Love Initiative.
My name is Trahern, Pollard, and I am the founder and CEO of We Push for Peace.
Good afternoon, Mike Stigers. I'm the CEO of Cub Foods.
Pastor Jeff Nehrbass, pastor at Gethsemane Lutheran in North Minneapolis.
Wonderful. Well, I will give a little highlight, but I'm really going to let the panelists talk about this partnership. But really kind of an overview, as you all saw when you registered for this event, is with the pandemic and the racial justice reckoning after the murder of George Floyd, there was really a new approach that Cub took to community-centered business that emerged, really looking how they could partner with nonprofits, really through the connection of a faith organization as well, and how they could both listen to, support, and uplift the community that they're a part of. And so that was looking at remodeling to loss management, so shoplifting, also handling how the space of the Northside Cub is used for the community, and then taking into account a food shelf and really prioritizing the community's health and wellness. So I know the panelists can talk way more about this than I, but if you could each, maybe we'll start with Mike and then go to the other panelists. If you could tell us about the partnership, just really how did this form and why? Any background would be great.
Sure, thank you very much. And again, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here and joining us. Let me just start by saying the amount of pride that all of us have at Cub Foods with our partnership and the community here that we serve. When the unfortunate event took place in the civil unrest, and this store was heavily damaged and it would be able to go forward for many years if it did go forward, we made a decision early on in Cub Foods that we would not abandon this location. This location is very critical to the north side, and that we would continue the operation. So from there, the franchise owner who owned the store prior, we made the agreement that we would take over the store as a company-owned store, and we would move forward from there. And at that point, I was having conversations with Mayor Fry's office, and an individual from the mayor's office said, Mike, we would recommend that you talk to Pastor Jeff, because one of the things that we wanted to do was make sure that we built a store and then we serve this community the way this community would like to have their grocery store be served. And so with that, I reached out and met Pastor Jeff for the first time and had a great conversation. And then a week or so later, he said I needed to speak to Lisa Clemons from A Mother's Love. And then I met Lisa. And then a couple of weeks after that, we needed to meet Trahern and met Trahern Pollard. And from that day forward, with every conversation, the relationship obviously grew larger, but there was trust that was earned with each and every single conversation we had. From the first conversation Pastor Jeff and I had, and then when Pastor Jeff brought Lisa in, and Lisa and I had an opportunity to meet each other with Pastor Jeff, and then we met with Trahern. The partnership really has come together. And when we had community meetings to decide or describe what the community would like in this store, They were very much a part of helping us design it, here to the community room and everything else. But it's been a great partnership based off trust and respect and open communications and having the ability and the honesty to have challenging conversations with each other.
Well, I'd love to hear from the other panelists, just as you, as Mike reached out to you all at the beginning of this, of what was your reaction? What was your thoughts as, you know, got a corporation? I don't know what your connection was to Cub prior to that in the community. We'd just love to hear from each of your perspectives. Maybe starting with Pastor Jeff, as you were kind of the connection,
He was the ringleader.
the linchpin of this. Maybe you, and then going down to Trahern and Lisa.
All right, well, what precipitated us getting together and starting with our relationship was just the disaster on the north side, the result of the terrible civil unrest and the concern among us as a community about where we would have a place to have food. We started doing food work right in the parking lot at Cub. We grabbed a corner. Mike was great about letting us set up shop. And we partner with anybody who wanted to partner with us to get food to our community. And we had huge lines of people who were showing up to get something to eat and then leaving with groceries. We realized that our community would need to work as its own entity, its own person, in order to address the needs of our own community. So we connected with some of the most important community people that we knew of at the time, Mother's Love, with Lisa Clemons, and said, hey, we need to be about this good work, and we need to wrap around as many of our community as we could. So I would say one of the most important things about this collaborative work that we did is how it arose. It arose out of the community's need to address a community issue, but in a community way. We wanted to address this issue ourselves in order to meet the needs of our own community. So it was really important that the work that we did was work that we did together, that it was folks who lived around here who wanted to work with us to make things happen, and then partner with individuals who could come with the resources that we simply didn't have. And then I would also say that Mike was just a remarkably open leader to working together to do this kind of work in our community. Mike is not part of the North Side, but he has a store on the North Side. And everybody who is on the North Side knows how important this store is for the North Side. And so his kind of his ticket of entry into our shared relationship is we really needed for this to work out well with Cub. And Mike came to us not as someone who sensed that he knew that we really needed him, but came with the heart of a servant who wanted to do whatever he could to make an important difference for the North Side and do it in a way that would engage the North Side in its own solution.
Also got the star to speak now. So I think Pastor Jeff is not tooting his horn loud enough, so I will toot that for him. We started working with Pastor Jeff during COVID. When COVID hit, the city shut down, the state shut down, and there was actually no plan for getting food to families, especially sick and shut-in families. So we started working with Pastor Jeff. He reached out. We started working with him and Reverend McAfee of New Salem Baptist Church. And what he taught A Mother's Love was about not just about food security, but also about the relationship to food and conversation, and being able to work with families and through eating and sharing bread with them. And from that comes conversations. And from that, you learn the needs of your community. And we did not know that until we met Pastor Jeff. And then we started doing that work with Reverend McAfee. So we not only was that we started at his church, and we started setting out boxes of food that was delivered to the church and sorting through that and making sure that families had the ability to come and get food during COVID. And then we were delivering meals to families who were sick and shut in, but could not get to a grocery store, especially our seniors. So Pastor Jeff did a whole lot more than he's saying. And on top of COVID, we ended up having the murder of George Floyd. And that burned down our city. That created a lot of looting and a lot of robberies, let's just say. I mean, but it created a lot. So it also created a food desert in the community, especially when you're dealing in a community with a lot of people who struggle already to be able to afford food. So we were at his church and he said, we need to do this on a larger scale. So we did, we came into this lot and we just took over a corner of the lot that ended up being a bigger portion of the lot. And we would start every morning with nothing but a prayer. And we started putting things out on Facebook and sharing it through social media, sharing it through the actual media. And then the parking lot would be full. And he would bring his big old grill up and put some food on the grill so that people who were waiting for us to get the food organized still had a hot meal in their stomach while they waited. So from that, we just started reaching out, and then Cub decided that they were going to come back. And we were really, really grateful for that because we have been hearing rumors that they weren't coming back. And that really made us all nervous. So when Cub decided they were going to come back, Pastor Jeff called me, and let me just add this piece. He was also instrumental in helping us hire youth. So anybody who was donating any financial money to us or to Pastor Jeff, we were using those funds to pay youth so that they weren't getting in trouble, that they were a part of rebuilding their community, and then we paid them a salary to do that. So they were out here loading groceries into little carry carts and taking them to the cars and loading them in the cars. They were earning a living and understanding now the importance of food and conversation, just as some other stuff. And from there, when Cub decided to come back and Mike reached out to Pastor Jeff, he right away called me. He and I came and they had already started on one side of Cub, and they had not started on this side that you see out here with all the meats. And so we came in and they walked us through and gave us their new vision. And from that vision, they talked about creating this safe space here. And it was a shocker to me for a business to want to invest that much in this community, especially in the most impoverished area of the community. So that part in itself was like, are you real? And he talked about this space and what he should do. And I said, I can bring some people to the table to talk to you about what you could do with that space. So we invited in more community voices, because I didn't want to be that only voice, invited in more community voices to talk about this space. And where he had me was when he talked about a tutoring space for young kids who are behind academically, to have a safe place to come to start that process of rebuilding themselves educationally. That right there was a seller for me. So he, from that moment, I came in and I saw a police squad car out here. Now remember, this is right after George Floyd was murdered. And I said to him, I think you need to think about having some softer security right now. And that softer security can decide when they need to call in law enforcement. But it needs to be somebody from the community that the people respect, that people trust. And I called Trey and I said, how fast can you come up to Cub Food? Because Mike was saying yes. So I said, how fast can you come up to Cub Food? Trey was here before the phone hung up. And then he went back and talked to them, and from there, their relationship was born. And Trey has since branched out, and I'll let him tell his own story. But one of the things that Mike did that was amazing to me is he involved every aspect in the community in this space and in that space. So when you go out, if you go out this door, you look to the right and you look up, there's a painting mural that was done by Juxtaposition. That's our young people who are up the street who are artists. So he engaged our young people and showcased them in the store. And then he reached out to talk about what do we do in here. So I said, I think you should let some of the artists in our community come in and, you know, paint in here and be a voice for our community in the art world. And he did that. He hired Sean Phillips to come in, and Sean did this amazing work. But Sean didn't stop there. Sean reached out to more of the community and invited people who were photographers and also painters like him to come in and add to this work. So the pictures that you see, you can't see them from in here, but if you go out that door to see all the pictures, those are people like Dynesta Anderson, pictures that were taken throughout our community during COVID and during the unrest. But those are pictures that people in our community took. And then he brought in a Hispanic female to do the wall right there. So everybody shared the vision with the community, but it started with Mike Steiger. And then I know you can't follow
I know. I know.
No competition.
Yeah, I'm sitting up here, kind of twiddling my thumbs, and I'm just like, I should have won before her. But nevertheless, you know, when the Lord puts something on your heart, you don't have to think about what you need to say. You just need to say it, right? Started a little bit before that. When the unrest started, myself and a few other men, the first time they came in Cub, we actually came in Cub behind them and got them out of here. We was also dealing with shootings of our young Black men in North Minneapolis at the same time. So when Minneapolis police came to the door, we were standing in front of the door because we had got all the looters out of the store the first time. And so when the police came, we said, okay, thumbs up, we're gonna go deal with this shooting now. And they said, thank you, we appreciate it, so forth and so on. At the time, I was actually driving for Metro Transit, and I had just got off work, and lo and behold, I called her mama, y'all call her Lisa, called me and said, where you at? I need you to come to Cub right now. I was like, okay. So I came up here. Unbeknownst to me, I was coming to meet an extraordinary man in Mike Stigers. I had no idea who Mike was. But what I said to Mike was, man, I really appreciate you investing in opening this store because it is very critical in this area. And honestly, that was really all that was said that day. I got his card and I got one of his coworkers' card. And so I reached out to Chris. I talked to him last night. And so me and Chris met. And I said to Chris, with the guidance of Mama, I said, you know, we can provide a customer engagement service for your grocery store, aside from the Minneapolis police. Flip side of that is Minneapolis police endorsed it. It was like, those are a good group of guys. They're doing an extraordinary job for you, and everybody knows them. So Mike signed off on it, like, okay, well, let's give it a shot. We started from 12 to 6 with 2 guys, right here at Cub Foods over North. And I remember sitting down talking to Mike, and he looked at me and he said, let me tell you something, Trahern. He don't call me Trey, he said Trahern. He said, Trahern, so a lot of people want to see us fail. He said, I'm not gonna let that happen. And a relationship was born at that moment. That relationship was predicated on trust and respect. Because one of the things he knew right away about me was that I was a man of integrity. If I said I was gonna do something, that's exactly what I was going to do. So he said to me, so what is your vision? I said, well, when I walked this path 30 years ago, I recall sitting down one time because I couldn't get a job. I had did some time in prison. And, most people will say, well, we give you a second chance, but the reality of it is they weren't giving me a second chance. And I remember pulling over on the side of the road, and I shared this with Lisa before, and I cried because I just couldn't understand. I couldn't even get a tree trimming job. Like the guy called me back and I said, hey man, like I'm trimming trees outside. Like, I mean, what's the problem? But I remember saying in prayer that day was that if you give me an opportunity and a platform to be a part of this change, I'm going to be your most trusted servant. Because of my partnership with Cub Foods, we have employed over 100+ men and women in the city of Minneapolis alone. In the city of Minneapolis alone. Some of which who have walked the same path that I walked 30 years ago. You guys want to know the impact that Cub Foods is having? Just look around. You see some of the men in here right now. You go outside, there's probably about another 30 outside right now. Because we also do outreach projects in this area with our partnership with Minnesota Stations, right? So we do way more than just what you see inside the grocery store. That also has opened up other doors. Those other doors have allowed us to create other programs within the organization. Work readiness with the young men and women we come in contact with. We help them develop resumes, all of which Cub Foods have actually hired. If they a little younger, they can't be on the battlefield with the older men like us, you know, when we out there doing outreach projects, things to that magnitude. And, you know, it just took for one individual to say, you know what, I'm gonna think outside of the box. So for those that who are watching, those who are present right now, like, if you don't take nothing from this conversation that we have with you today, just take that. Because you'll be surprised how many people's lives you can actually change by thinking outside of the box, right? And then our brother, Pastor Jeff, I wasn't gonna tell a story, Jeff, but I'm gonna tell you.
Pastor Jeff.
Yeah, he know what I mean. So when the unrest started, and they did eventually have the opportunity to really tell Cub Foods up, it was closed. And the only other place that you was able to potentially get any kind of groceries was Solo, which is probably a couple of miles down the road. So a lot of the men in the community decided that we're not letting nobody else come over here and do nothing. We're gonna protect this one little area. So therefore people can just get essential things that they may need in North Minneapolis. So we started sitting in that parking lot when they closed the doors overnight. We wasn't letting nobody come in that parking lot. Minneapolis police, Inspector Adams and them, they'd come down there every night checking on us. Y'all good? Y'all need anything? We had National Guard on Broadway. Like, this is what was happening. So the second day I was out there, I ain't even told you this story. I'm standing out on the street down on Fremont or Lowry. It was on Lowry. So I see this Caucasian man pulling up in his truck. And I looked down at him, I said, man, you lost. What's going on here? So everybody in the parking lot, again, we ready to protect this grocery store. So everybody like, who was that? Who was that? Pastor Jeff get out the car. He ain't have his, his pastor, nothing, just a regular shirt. And looked at us and was like, I'm just coming to see if y'all home. And so I looked behind the truck and he had this grill the size of this table. And he poured in there, didn't say nothing to nobody, flipped the tops up and started throwing steaks on the grill like this big. And he literally did that like almost every single night. And never asked for nothing, never said nothing. He just, you like it well, medium well, how you like it? And he just flipping the steaks, that real talk. And so throughout this process, him and Lisa's relationship was already formulated, and he had started doing a program with some kids at his church. And just that little bit, he called me and said, man, I need you to send me a couple of guys over here. And so, just with his partnership alone, we was able to hire men just over the summer. See, we talk about the things that this community needs, right? See, we don't talk about it because we know, right? Can't go talk to a young man and a young woman if you don't have something to offer, right? They done with the conversations as it pertains to, hey, you probably shouldn't be standing over here by this gas station. Hey, you shouldn't be doing that. Like, no, we want to go over there and engage with those men and women and say, hey, listen, if I could show you something different, would you actually be willing to do something different? And every last one I'm gonna tell you right away, like, yeah, come on with it. Okay, well, here we go. Right? So I say it all the time. One, eternally grateful and truly blessed to have met Mike, Mr. Stigers, man. And like, I could go on and on and on and on, but it's nothing fictitious about it. Like when you hear him say something, that's actually what it is, right? He have his wife and daughter, sister-in-law came to pass out cookies and gave me cookies. And she got
I finally got my cookie.
That's
That's a whole sore topic, right?
She had a judge, I said, but his whole entire family is involved. Like everybody know who Mrs. Stigers is. Matter of fact, we was doing national night out.
Yeah.
And she Reverendo at the time, and Lisa, and we was all standing over there. And I just was like, I said, Mike, where your wife at? He's like, I don't know. She done walked all the way across the Broadway parking lot. She's like, I'm just looking around, seeing what's going on. I was like, well, you might want to come back down here by the music, you know what I mean? But again, so it's nothing fictitious about these guys just sitting on this counter right now. And the work that we've done and collaborating together is as good as it gets. And just to think we just getting started.
Absolutely.
Can I add something to it? It really sounds like we're up here roasting Mike Steiger, but he picked a strong team of people that also work with him in this store and in this community. Amon is there, Carrie is here. So while he may be the man, but he's not. He shares all of it with a strong team of people that he has brought into our community as well. I mean, we utilize this space to do tutoring and empowerment classes for women. They've opened some doors, and I'm telling you this, I've been here for over 40 years, and I have never seen a business stop. I have never seen a business, but I've never seen a business that when they ask for your views or opinions, they incorporate that into it. I mean, there are times when if there's a shooting or homicide, we respond to those scenes. And normally there's families who are too in pain with grief to cook meals. I've never hesitated to pick up the phone to call Carrie and say, I got a family here. Can you help me? And then a mom will call and say, we have gift cards for you at the counter. And so it's real. So I don't want to just toot Mike's horn without saying that he is instrumental in bringing together a strong family in Cub Foods. I think.
Well, Lisa, thank you for that. And one thing where I was going to go before you said that is that all that we've been able to do is because of the great team that we do have that I work with, my colleagues. Amon is just is our store director here. He's just done an absolutely phenomenal job. Carrie is our director of community relations and just absolutely has embraced all of you to do that. With us today is Diana, our head of HR for Cub, our chief human resource officer. Laura, our general counsel, is here. But when all the decisions were made, do we build the store? Do we continue on? You know, we are a publicly traded for-profit grocery company. And, you know, we are owned by United Natural Foods Incorporated, UNFI. And, you know, we have shareholders, we have analysts, and everything that you do in large publicly traded corporations in America. I report to, at that time, Steve Spinner, our chairman of the board. And I would call Steve and just give him an update where we are. And he would say, okay, what are you doing? What's the plan? You know, what are your instincts? What do you know, Mike, what are you going to do? And one of the tenets of UNFI is to do the right thing. And when you work for a company whose tenet is to do the right thing, it really allows all of us as in leadership to just simply do the right thing. And that was the extent of the financial planning that went into what we were doing here on the north side. But honestly, there's a lot more than that went on behind the scenes, because we did do all the work. But the reality is, when you do the right thing, good things come from that. And when you meet the right people, and you trust, and you hold accountable, and you have open communications, good things happen. And I think a grocery store is much more than just a place to buy food and to get food for a community. It really is. And I believe this with all my heart. And I've been doing this for quite a few years, is that a grocery store is the center of the community. And in a natural or national emergency, the grocery store is the last to open, or is the last to close and the first to open. And that's exactly what we did here. But we did it with the community. We did it with just an incredible team at Cub that I just can't be more proud of. But from everyone within the UNFI organization and the Cub organization, we were able to be where we are today. So it's a team effort.
It's just to elaborate a little bit more on that, when I say that it's just an extension of a family. That's exactly what it is. Amon is truly a tremendous friend of me, man. And he actually walks outside of his grocery stores. He attended service at some of the funerals that we would assist with. He just wanted to come and just be present, right? Carrie was on vacation and sent me a picture of a street with the last name Pollard. I got that up in my office, just so you know. So just things like that. So again, and Diana has been extremely instrumental from the Human Resources Department. They give us a lot of leeway. I know sometimes they cringe and twist their fingers and toes. I get it, but like we said, what you're hearing right now, it's nothing fictitious about this. This is exactly what it is. So like this, what we're talking about is exactly what's happening on a day-to-day basis.
Well, and I think you all touch on so our center, as I said before, focuses on really cross-sector leadership and initiatives, and so many things that you all touched upon in the story to make successful partnerships, right, is starting with trust, starting with those relationships, and then also thinking of, you don't have to have all the details worked out right away, but do you have, a shared goal in mind or a shared idea that you want to get to, and then figuring out how kind of each of those players, right, we're taking a corporation, right, we're taking a faith organization and two nonprofits together. That can be really challenging for those organizations to come together. But then it can also, in this case, I'm not going to say it was totally easy, right? We want to talk about challenges too, because there are always challenges. But you think about how much those trust in that relationship and knowing that people are coming from the intention that they're coming from to be able to continue to move that partnership. So I guess before we move on to talk about the challenges that or any kind of hiccups along the way, I want to give Lisa and Trey an opportunity. I think people are familiar with Cub Foods, and then also you as well, Pastor Jeff, just to talk about each of your organizations, because I know you've referenced a lot of that. People on, here in this room or on Zoom call might not be familiar with We Push for Peace, Some Others Love, or the church as well. And so if you just maybe want to touch on what your organization does, you've obviously touched on how it is connected to this. But I know that each of your organizations do other things not necessarily tied directly to Cub Food or to Cub. So would love you to share that for people who aren't aware.
I can go first.
This time.
Amen. We push for peace. I'm just a kid from the south side of Chicago, like I stated before, that didn't always make the right choice and decision. But I would always find myself talking to young men and women when I had the opportunity to. That's all I was doing. I would go to some of the schools and just share, about how not to allow a bad choice or decision dictate the outcome of your life. And then, like I stated before, the unrest started, and we were just trying to be a staple for young men and women that was out there protesting, just stating that the voice can be heard, but it doesn't have to be destructive. And that was the only message that we were conveying. And it led me to meet Mama and other people. appreciate it. We do this all day. And so as I started to progress, let's be clear, everything that has happened for We Push for Peace, it was simply predicated on an introduction that Lisa gave me to Mike. The substantial growth of We Push for Peace literally has really happened over the last 2 years. 2 years. I will allude to this as well because of Mike. Whole Foods actually reached out to Mike. Said, hey man, what you guys doing over there? We was able to develop a relationship with them as well. So now We Push for Peace is not only in Minnesota, but we also in Wisconsin and as well as Chicago, where I was actually born and raised. So we've hired over 100 plus men and women here, but throughout the 3 different states, we plus 300 right now. Great. And what happened is I look back to that prayer that I shared with y'all when I first started talking. If you give me the platform, I'm gonna be your most trusted servant. He's given me the platform and I'm holding true to exactly what I promised him, which is why these doors is open. So what we do, and just so you know, when you're doing this work, you typically try to find partnerships that one, it's not out here saying they're doing the work, but they're not actually doing it, right? You want to have a partnership with individuals that is out here just working tirelessly to be a part of change, just like you. One of the biggest blessings that's ever happened to me is when I met her. Period. I'll tell anybody in the country that because that's the truth. She not only guides and mentored me, but she said to me very early on, just stay away from the foolishness. That was the best advice she could have given, right? So what we do is, and so one hand washes the other. So like the Department of Corrections reached out to me to have a platform to work with young men that's going through the justice system, to try to put a crutch in that door, because for those that don't know, 90% of African-American men and women that get out of prison, they go back in 3 months. So I worked tirelessly for a year to develop a partnership with them, and I explained to them what it would look like. I also said, however, I'm gonna need some help. And I said, I can work with all the young men you send me, but it ain't nothing like a mother's love. That's exactly what I said. I called Lisa, I said, hey, some of these young ladies, and so we have a partnership with the Department of Corrections. She worked with the women, I work with the guys, right? We have a commercial driver's license program with them. We Push for Peace. 100% success rate. 140 people came, graduated, passed, out on the roads. They now have a livable, sustainable wage. That might have the opportunity to meet a young man and a young woman we're working with right now. They got a chance to come over and meet the go. So that was like extraordinary for them.
You know, when I met Bree Trade, it was really fun. I met her, I go, hey, are you in charge? Are you watching this guy? Yeah, are you in charge? And instead of being shy or anything like that, she looked at him and she goes, I can be. So I said, man, you're hired. That's a future leader. I mean, that's just incredible when you get someone that with that much energy.
And so, yeah, Bree, a young lady we just met, and I sit down and talk with Bree and things like that. So we have a commercial driver's license program that we have been doing now for the last 4.5, 5 months. We do the work readiness where we help young men and women develop resumes, mock interviews, things to that magnitude, trying to help them get employed. We help them guys with obtaining apartments and things to that magnitude. So yeah, we have a lot of moving parts within the organization. More importantly, we know what the needs are, again, because we out here every single day. We out here. You wouldn't know that if you're not out, right? So as we go, if I'm developing a program, I share with you. And just like her, she's developing a program, she shared with me because she do things that I don't do. And I do things that she don't do. So we kind of feed off each other. I just looked over my shoulder and seen a really, really instrumental pastor to me, man. He can actually play golf pretty good too. This Mr. Hightower over here. And I just looked up and said, Pastor, good to see you, man. Love that man tremendously. Doctor, he got 1,000 titles. That's my man. So that's a part of what we push for peace. And again, I can't stress this enough. It all started when I walked the Cub Foods door on August of 2020. And met Mike. That's, I can't, it ain't no other way to say it because that's exactly happened. In a matter of a year and a half now, in 2 years of office, everything that I just spoke to all started. That's what we push.
Well, it all started by me. Give it to Michael. But no, I'm just kidding. So I am grateful. So I am a retired sergeant from the Minneapolis Police Department. And a lot of people think you should whisper that, but I say that now. It was my dream as a young Black girl to be a police officer, and I accomplished that dream. So I'm always going to be excited to tell people that. When I left the Minneapolis Police Department, I didn't leave there happy. But I knew when I left there, I wanted to do whatever I could to keep young people out of the back of the squad car. So I started with opening a child care center with my brother, sitting back there, Al Flowers. He now runs Minnesota Safe Streets. And from there, I opened one over north here with my sisters. And we only hired African American mothers to come in and be a part of educating their own children. So if you had a felony and you couldn't go to the daycare, we hired you as a janitor. That way you can still hear what we were teaching your children and be able to carry that forward when you had them at home. So it was all about, if the county was going to give me this money for young Black children, I was going to give it back to their parents to be part of their educational training. So from there, I came into writing this program called the Mother's Love Mission. And the reason I wrote it was because every table that I tried to sit at, there was no chair for a Black woman to sit at, especially for a Black woman. And early on, I was told by Al Flowers and Spike Moss and always a Black man who told me this, stop begging for a seat at your table. Bring your own chair or create your own table. So I brought in a lot of African-American women from the community. A lot of them were women I had gone to high school with, or just women that you had to reflect the community we were going to serve. So I brought in women who had been married, who were divorced or still married, mothers, or people who I think every woman is mother, whether you bore a child or not, I believe every woman is mother. So I'm sorry, y'all. Y'all wrong for this.
Her phone ringing, we wrong.
Okay. Yeah, but anyway, but it was just a cross section of young women, young mothers, just everybody, so that whoever we had to address in the community, we were meeting you where you were, and we understood what you were going through. And I'm telling you this, the hardest thing in the world is being a Black woman trying to be a voice for Black people in your community. I started in 2014, and unlike Trey, as an African-American man who was introduced in, it didn't happen that fast for us. 2018 was when it first happened for us. So after 4 years of being out here on the ground, paying people out of my pocket, because I think if you come and do a service, you should be. So in 2018, an African-American chief named Arredondo and his deputy chief, Art Knight, I was their first training officer in the police department. So they both called me and asked me if we would come to downtown Minneapolis because they were having an issue with young women, especially young mothers being downtown, fighting, having their babies down there with them. So that was the first door that opened for a mother's love. So we started boots on the ground, going out into the community, building trust, building respect, and just being there. And from that, we started getting calls about shootings and homicides from precinct commanders, the homicide units, saying, can you come out? The community is grieving, the community is in pain. We're trying to work this crime scene. Can you please come out and be a voice with the community? So that's how we started coming out into the community throughout the city. And from there, I was able to use that platform to continue to build out, to not only be creating empowerment classes for, we look at root cause. You hear a lot about root cause, where people talk about you have to find the root cause. And I started suspecting that people really didn't understand what that meant. It was starting to become a buzzword. And the more women we talked to at the hospitals when they were waiting to see whether their loved ones were going to live or not, the more we talked to them, we realized that you believe that just because someone gave birth to a child, they should know how to be a mother to that child. And if you were never taught that, if you didn't have somebody in your life that showed you that, you ended up being judged as a single mom. And the only time you talk about those single moms is when there's a mistake with their kids. You don't talk about the success stories that come with being a single mom raising kids. And then we realized that every time I went to I'm very loud, I'm just being real. So every time I go to an event and it's a state address or a city address or a ward address, they always just talked about the Black man and the Black boy. Well, I'm thankful to you for that. But what you forget is oftentimes as a Black mom in a single parent home, I'm raising a daughter and a son. So I would get up out of my seat loudly and say, oh, I'm just sick of this. And I would just walk out of the space. And finally somebody would say, why do you keep doing that? And I said, because you forget Black women in that occasion. And you keep talking about doing things for our Black kids. I don't care if they school for 3, 6, 9 hours. I don't care if you do an event in the community. If I'm broken in my home, when my kid comes back home, guess what? He's coming or she is coming back to a broken home. So if you didn't fix me, you have not fixed my child. So I created this, if you save the mother, you save the child. You save the father, you save the family. You save the family, you save a community. So if we're not looking at saving families, then we're not saving anything. So we centered our programming around saving the whole family. So when I need Trey or Al from Minnesota Safe Streets, I don't have a problem with asking for help. So we did get the county contract to do Sisters Helping Sisters. We brought in the women from Salem Inc. to have not just, we wanted a religious component to what we do as well. And we brought in Dietrich from Giving It a Voice, because we wanted a young voice to come in and talk about grief and trauma. Because we found that mothers were passing their grief and trauma onto their kids, but they weren't intentional in that. They didn't understand that they were doing that. So we started these 8-week empowerment classes. We started with Beginning a Journey, where Don Esther, she does this hat routine where she talks about the many hats that women and mothers wear, that we don't even recognize we're wearing those different hats, because we're just doing what we believe is our natural responsibility to do. So we created these programs. So right now we have 38 young women and mothers, and now their sons have joined the group, and the fathers of their children have asked to join the group. And we told the county, we can't save them. We cannot turn them away because you're not going to pay for this. We'll find a way to pay for this because it's about the family. So we create jobs. Cub Food has given some of our participant jobs. We will farm them out to Trey's program or to Reverend McAfee's program to teach them a trade. Everybody is not college ready, but they are trade ready. So we talk about budgeting and how to shop on a shoestring budget, how to have fun with your kids without believing you gotta spend $100 to do that. So we just recreate the narrative for the African-American mother, but we have now started getting women, period, no race, women, period, coming to be a part of our program. But let me just say this last part. So, but we have been blessed to be able to use this very space that you're sitting in, that those women, it took us a long time to build not just trust, but a safe space for them. And this is the space that we do all of that work in. When it's not being used by somebody else in the community, they see this as a safe space.
I just wanted to elaborate on what Lisa said, because I'm not sure how many viewers we have, but she said something that was very important. Although we are, and we share in a contract with the Hennepin County Department of Corrections, we was just on the phone talking about this yesterday with them, because what I was hearing was a lot of programs, but they was predicated on helping these young men and women based upon the funds that they had received. And me and Lisa winded up jumping on the call. I mean, we was already on the call, but we winded up raising our hand, and I told those programs, like, listen, if you do come in contact with those men and women that you are not getting funded for, send them to me. Because you can't be willing to do this work if you're not willing to invest yourself, right? So a lot of times, you know, individuals, they always say, man, what you do? How can I help? What you do? How can I help? And I just, that's half the time what I do. Really, you don't know how you can help. But that is quite essential, because we do, I mean, half the people in our program right now, we don't get funding for, we fund them ourselves. And then I wanted to just elaborate, because I just started this. So we just also started an expungement process with the partnership with the what's the name of that? One of y'all, restorative. Yeah, restorative. So we do an expungement process. So a lot of these young men and women that's coming in contact with us, part of the program, we also try to help them expunge their past indiscretions that are, you know, so guys know of anybody that's looking to maybe start that process, we push for peace.org. Just send me an email and we get them signed up. We don't say no to nobody.
Can I say this? I do want to give some attention to Dr. Hightower. This is Dr. Hightower. He does the Community Action Program, CAP, in our community. And he has also been instrumental when we talked about partnership. When Trey and I didn't really have anything, he created a partnership with us to give us more widespread word out in the community and stretching into even Brooklyn Center. He's also instrumental in fighting for us to get an at-risk youth center at the Gordon Center in North Minneapolis here. So when we talk about partnerships, we're really talking about a bigger outreach in our communities that will have an impact that will be lasting. So I do want to say thank you. And I really am glad you're here. We fight all the time too, just.
Yeah. He a pretty good golf player too, just so y'all know.
Oh, got it back to the golfing.
Yeah, he hit that thing pretty good.
I'm the only one up here that can't golf.
Well, you can add me to that.
Oh, you too.
I'm not too good.
Well, and Pastor Jeff, you want to just give a little bit more background on you and your faith organization,
Sure.
and then we'll move from there.
Yeah, all right. I grew up in a grocery family. We owned a little grocery store that my father inherited from his dad. That's where I learned about the power of food, more than how it feeds our minds and our bodies and our spirit. But it becomes a tool for engagement, getting to know your neighbors, your community, and people start talking around food, around meals. So that was a very important life lesson for me that I took into my seminary and pastoral years. Been a pastor now for almost 30 years, most of it on the north side. There are lots of NGOs that work at different sides of how to build community. My dear colleagues work most intently and feverishly in some of the more difficult and acute areas. I'm on a different end. Most of the work that I do is in building community. Our charter as a church is to engage in life-giving Christian community, to gather people and folks get to know one another. And then from that, be stunned at all the things that bubble up. So we have a food shelf, a big one now. And as soon as the weather stays reasonably okay, we have our big smoker. It's out, it's running every single day, 10 o'clock, we light it up. The smoke goes like incense into the neighborhood, letting folks know that lunch is ready. And folks come and they sit and they talk. When they talk, that's when community is built. We talk about our children, we talk about our neighborhoods, we talk about the trash problem, we talk about who it is that we want to be. We get to know, I had no idea that you lived 2 doors down from me. We build community simply by gathering around the table, which as an old pastor has great theological meaning for me. One of the most surprising things, I'm continually surprised, is how creating a space for the building of community not only empowers the community to see itself as an agent of change, but produces the agents. I'm always amazed at what comes out of lunch conversations about, hey, how a good idea can be something that we can do together, how we can start walking around our blocks to see if our neighbors are okay, that we can put up a phone tree so that we can call one another, do welfare checks from house to house. That community engagement at a much more grassroots level, not that all the work that we're doing isn't grassroots, because it's coming from our community, but my particular end is in throwing a plate out and see what happens.
For sure. Well, before we open it up to questions from the audience, I would like to, as we kind of foreshadowed a little before, talk about challenges, right? This has obviously been a successful partnership, and I think we can all just tell by the relationships with one another, or even the kind of poking of joking around with one another. These are really strong relationships that have been built, but that's not without challenge. So maybe we start with Mike and others just jump in of what have been some of the challenge, what have been some of maybe the roadblocks as you've worked through this partnership. And I know both you and Cub and We Push for Peace have kind of expanded their partnership, but what challenges have come with partnering with the corporation and a nonprofit and nonprofits?
I think it's great. And it's like I said, when we first started opening the conversation is whatever challenges this came forward, when we identify the challenge on a basis of trust and communication, you're able to find the solutions. Some of the basic challenges were for the need of a food bank or a food shelf is one of the things that Second Harvest Heartland needed, and the other distributors of the food shelves is a drop location. Where could they drop food for the food shelves and food pantries to pick up? And so early on, Allison from Second Harvest Heartland and I had a conversation about letting this store be the depository for food shelves, and to take a for-profit grocery company and then say we're going to bring donated food into the building and then segregate it, and then to have a place for cold storage. So there was frozen foods and chilled, ambient temperature as well as chilled and frozen. That we would be able to provide locations for that. Well, that's very different than what is in any other model. So we worked out how to do this, where all of the protocols are followed for food safety. All the state, federal, and local protocols were followed, as you would expect. But it was just, that was, everyone was saying at first, remember the early conversations? Oh, we just can't commingle them. And it's like, no, this store, the Northside Community Center is a safe place for anyone and everyone. And that this is where you come to get food, whether you're food secure or food insecure. This is where you come and proudly get what you need for your family. And that's how we have been able to work through when this room is used as a food shelf, when this room is for our back rooms are used as a distribution center, if you will, as a regular grocery store. But here again, it would be very easy at the very beginning to say, no, can't do that. It's never been done. Where cool heads and through smart people with the right heart will find a way to get things done. And the one thing that Pastor Jeff has been so instrumental on from day one is not only as we look at the human need, as we look at the hunger need, when we look at the business needs, is that Pastor Jeff always, I almost called you Father Jeff, see, what Pastor Jeff always reminded us is that there's the whole body needs to be healed and the whole body needs to be whole. And that's the spirit and the brain and the heart and the soul as well. And I think by tying in the religious aspect, the spiritual aspect, the business aspect, and the NGO aspect, and we all are respectful of what we bring to this solution, I think that's when we all are able to come up with really phenomenal results at the end of the day. But it takes all of us to remind each other of that, because different times we get very focused on what our specialty is. And then I'll get my brother here will give me a snack, or Pastor Jeff will send me a little text, or Lisa just flat out calls me and tells me what's wrong. But the cool point is the way we all communicate is exactly how we keep this going through all of our teams. I mean, all of us represent great teams that work every single day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to keep this program and to keep this vision going forward for us.
Challenges. It's a challenge with her every day. So, like every day. So I wanted to throw that out there. And Donna, while she over there trying to act quiet, Donna's saying. Honestly, as it pertains to We Push for Peace and some of the young men and women that we hire, some of the challenges that we have is the hardest thing to change is an individual's mind, right? And so even though it's right in front of them, the substantial growth that they can have not only in their life but the impact they can have on other people's lives, sometimes that's hard for them to comprehend, and that's simply because of some of where they come from and some of the things they can do in their life and what have you. And so we try to be a reminder. A consistent reminder that, if you don't believe in you, then nobody else will, right? As it pertains to being in the grocery stores, we deal with a lot of things. More so than anything, get that compatibility. So as we grow, as we have grown, I would call Lisa and say, hey, listen, this is some of the things I'm dealing with. Or more importantly, I call Mike and I say, and because I utilize the Carrie too, right? Hey, Carrie, listen, like I utilize all my friendships, like seriously, because maybe they have experienced something to this magnitude versus me. And I listen very well. And so as we, as we grow, I continue to implement. So like some of the things we deal with in the grocery stores is mental health instability. So we have mental health awareness. You can be aware of what you're dealing with, then you can better deal with it, right? De-escalation. We're not here to hurt, harm, or put danger to nobody, but we also don't want other customers to be in danger, right? So we have de-escalation class. And again, communication. Because of Lisa, we are getting ready to do she gonna set us up to do Narcan training, because some of the things we deal with in the grocery stores is, fortunately, drug addicts going in the restroom, and we deal with ODs. We want to be able to assist them. We want to be able to help them, right? So we've had those challenges, but again, when you have a solid team, you have a really good team, you deal with it. You don't, but we come back to that, like, no. We deal with it right then and there. And because of that, that's how we've been able to go, right? So we knew that going in the beginning. Mike said to me, he said, it's gonna be kind of challenging. I said, we up for it. Because our overall objective is real simple. It's to provide a different service versus calling 911. That's just what it is, right? And we've been able to do that. So aside from, like I just stated before, our special individuals that get those 5-finger discounts. Oftentimes, we'll just say, listen, I don't really care about what you got. How can I prevent you from coming in here doing that again? Better yet, let me pay for that. Like, those are the things that we do in the grocery store that we don't ever even talk about. You see what I'm saying? Challenges, we had quite a few in the beginning, but as it sits right now, it's really just a smooth sailing everyday basis now, you know what I mean? But it took us a year and a half.
Well, and I think some of the challenges we had also were because we were able to work the community through those challenges, that the institutions around us have respect for what is working now. So, for example, there was a situation with MPD, Chief Arredondo, before he retired. There was trust of what was happening there. So we had the support of Chief Arredondo. We've had the support of Mayor Fry. We've had the support of Governor Walz and all of their agencies who are aware of what's going on. We were able to really come to some very quick solutions so that the trust is there. So when something does go wrong, honest intent is assumed, and then we investigate what took place, and then we learn from there how to fix so we don't repeat that same thing. And I think that's what's important, is that all the external parties as well understand what's happening, and that we take time to make sure everyone understands that, especially from a large, like I said before, a publicly traded company. Laura, our general counsel, is very much involved in our decisions. When Sandy Douglas took over as CEO of UNFI, one of the first things he wanted to do was come to the Twin Cities, visit Cub, and wanted to come to this location. So when you get support from that level of executive, it makes everything happen just that much easier. So it takes, like they say, it takes a village, but it takes a community, but it takes a lot of external people, not just the folks that are here in the room.
Well, I'd love to open it up to questions. For those of you who are virtual, you can use a Q&A feature. And those of you in person, if you have any questions, I do have an ending question as well. I do want to talk about the continuation of this partnership, but for those in the audience, are there anything that maybe hasn't been addressed you'd like the panelists to address further? We'll take a pause and wait for some hands to raise.
She got a question.
So many.
Yeah.
I'll follow up with a question on scaling for all of you. First off, like a measurable success here. And I know that when you have a success like this, people start to notice. Foods calls you and says like, hey, you want to expand, all of a sudden you have pressure from your leaders, your broader team to probably think about like, how do you put this model into other places? And we also know from this model that like it takes time, it takes trust, relationship building, requires like deep, intentional, day in and day out interaction. And so I wonder first, like, how are you having conversations on the corporate side around like we need time and it needs to be done correctly, let's not succumb to the pressures of the business world for speed and growth. And as you are growing on the nonprofit side, like deepening these relationships with sort of these business leaders, like how are you also making sure that you're able to stay grounded in the relationships that make this work so successful?
Well, for me, I often allude to this, as a matter of fact. I kind of foresee some organizations, they do what I call lane jumping. They go from here to here to here to here to here to here. I have a lane. I'm really good at this lane, but I also know I can continue to grow in this lane. Started almost 30 years ago with that prayer. If I have a platform to create job opportunities that's livable and sustainable for individuals that's essentially passing brushes with the law in the prison or what have you, then I want to be your most trusted servant. That's my lane. As it pertains to dealing with mental health instabilities, work readiness, and expungement programs, CDL programs, it's all centered around having a platform to create livable, sustainable wages for individuals, period. That's my lane. I'm going to stay right in it, right? I am very humble, very humble. I've been blessed to have 3 of my own children that works for the organization. 2 sons and a daughter. My sister, she just left, she works for the organization. My brother, he just left, he works for the organization. Again, I just wanted that platform, and now I have it, I'm gonna just nurture it. So that's how I stay home. That's it's really simple. That's actually the easy part for me.
So for me, we don't get to stay in one lane because our work takes us in 2 different lanes. So we're not stationary in a store. Trey is not really in one lane because he also does CDL training. So your lane kind of curves based on the needs of the families that you're working with. Y'all know I'm saying what's real. But your lane, you really do. You do try to be, Trey's not just in the Cub food stores. He's not just in the whole food stores. When you start to work with families and individuals, their needs is just like your kids. Every one of your kids have a different need and they all think you love the other one more than you love that one. But you have to address the needs. So even though Trey and Like a Mother's Love, we may be getting employment for people who come into our lane, where they are in life is different. So I may have to come out of my lane to help that one person and then move back into my lane again. So for us as women, our lane just, when we go out in the community, we don't just end right there helping that family at that crime scene. We continue to work with that family to try to make them whole again. So we meet them where they are and then we go into whatever lane that family needs us to go into. But I do agree with what.
You use your turn signal?
I never use a turn signal. I turn right on a red light. I do all of that.
That's why I asked. I wanted that to be public.
Yes.
It's recorded.
Look, if the police ain't out there, I might make I'll follow traffic laws. But with families, we do often have to come outside of what that plan is to make sure that we meet the needs of those individuals. So we do try.
If I could answer a different part of that question, doing this kind of stuff is hard. It's not easy to do,
Job, I know.
but there is a recipe. It involves a relationship, deep engagement, deep investment, the desire to make an effective change, and keeping your ears open always to listen for what the community is telling you is a solution to their problems. How to educate other leaders to do this kind of work, I can only imagine is a bit of a challenge because it's not enough just to know this stuff. And it's not enough just to do this kind of work. You have to be embedded in the community that you are serving in order for any of this education to make the kind of change that we're beginning to see here on the side.
I think one of the things that we say quite a bit at Cub, and we believe this as servant leaders, is that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth and use them in that order. So when I met with Pastor Jeff and then Lisa and Trahern, we had, Lisa, remember one of the first early community meetings we had, it was online. And we had members from the Parks and Recreation Department, we had Department of Education, all the and other community folks. We were really asking, what do you need? What are the needs of the community? And one of the reasons this room's here, and the size that it is because the athletic director from the local high school said, Mike, we don't have a place, to have a team party. We need a place just to, to celebrate our kids. And so it's like, all right. So we wrote down, needs to be big enough to support an athletic team and their parents and have food. And that's why we have both high schools on the wall. So, this is a safe place for everyone in the north side. But that's what it is. It's listening and then how to apply it, because it will be different for every community. Every community will have its own need and its own specifications.
Well, and I'll say this, the name on this, we created that name.
That's right.
on this Zoom call community with Mike, we picked this name that you see outside. We wanted it to belong to the north side, and he let us do it. I mean, he didn't try to make suggestions. We just said, this is what we want, and that's what the consensus was. Trey was on the call as well, and that's how we got it.
When I think of a lot of things you've addressed of really how do you take kind of these ideas, these needs, and put them into action, right? And addressing, I think we've all heard the relationships, the trust, but also recognizing who are the people that are in the room? Are they the right people in the room with the right skills? Do you need to bring other people to the table? Or create your, to use Lisa's, have them bring up a chair, right? Or create a new table, and thinking of all of those things, right? Of this has obviously been successful, but each cross-sector collaboration is going to have its own challenges, its own needs. But if you kind of pay attention to those kind of at the grounding of who's involved, what your goals are, what that trust and relationship is, and then it does give the opportunity to grow and have it continue to be successful.
I want to say something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we have a question from the audience, or the virtual audience too.
And a part of that in the beginning, one of the things I also stated to Mike was that, I don't just want to be standing in a grocery store, engaging with people, helping them if they need it or what have you. I said I wanted to tie Cub Foods into the community, right? Which is why we have an enormous amount of events. Like we have an event like every 30 days in that parking lot. We done did bike giveaways. We do back to school backpack drives. We do laptop give. We gave away 100 free laptops over here last November. And this is not just at Cub North. This is at all of our locations. So I send them guys a list of events that we're gonna do, and they thumbs up as always. And and when we do events, we do an event. Everybody come, like the parking lot be kind of packed. So that was a part of the strategy in the beginning, you know what I mean? So and like Pastor Jeff said, like you can't be effective if you don't have relationships. Let's be clear, right? You have to have a relationship. Like Pastor Jeff can walk from here all the way to his church, and he probably gonna encounter 400 people, and all of them gonna say, Pastor Jeff, how you doing, man? He know everybody. You know why? Because he out here every day, right? So just like Lisa, just like myself, like my team, you look in the back of the parking lot, I got 30 guys back there, right? They walking up through Broadway and Lindale. We effective because we know everybody that we come in contact with. So I just wanted to make sure I answer that. Question.
David, do you want to ask a
Sure.
question
So
from
here's a
online?
question from the online audience, and this question is for Mike. And it says, I think you said something to the effect of, when you do good, good things follow. Companies, however, are judged quarterly on their results and are therefore sometimes under pressure to show the corporate benefit of doing good quickly within the quarter, when building the trust to do good may take a longer time. How do you navigate these competing timeframes and talk effectively about the benefit to shareholders of this kind of important partnership?
That's a great question. It's a great question, and it's true. There's no question that as a publicly traded officer, we need to have our investors and our shareholders expect a return on that investment financially, and we always keep our eye on the ball of what we're doing, so that the organization has our objectives. We work to achieve our objectives on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and a quarterly basis, and that allows us, when you have a great team and you're running a good operation, you challenge your team to hit the financial objectives that you need to, so that the other members of the team can focus on the community, which is the long-term build of a sustainable company. You have to have long-term customers, you have to have long-term financial stability, but you have to have the support of the community you serve. And I think what we call it is Cub in the community. So we want to be effective in every single store that we operate in the communities that we serve. But there's a balance of your investment into community, your investment into new stores, new equipment, new technology, but the investment to the people, our teammates for their continued education, the investment to the community through goods and services are critical, and it does come together. And there's times when the leader just has to be brave and bold and make a decision and say, this is the decision we're going to go with, and this is how we're going to have to pay for it, and this is what we're going to do. And it's not always easy. It doesn't always just fall in the quarter you expect it to, or in the period you expect it to. But you have to have open communication with your investor relations team so that they know what we're doing, so we can communicate effectively to our shareholders. And I think that's what we've been able to demonstrate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, in the last 5 minutes here, really wrapping up, I'd love for you all to share your hopes or the next steps as you think about whether that's expanding this partnership. I know there's this has been expanded a bit, but or really continuing to enhance each of your own programs or the current partnership. But would love to hear any hopes or next steps to share with the audience, and then we'll wrap up from there.
So I'm hoping that we do expand these partnerships. A mother's love wants to always be at the table, especially with Mike and Jeff and Trahern. But we want to make sure that the table is fair, and it has been. It has been. But we do want to bring more people to the table to be part of the partnership that we share. I don't think I would change anything at this point with my relationship with people.
I second that motion. I truly do. I often say that, what's happening in store for the organization will be. My objective is to continue to be a man of integrity, work hard, keep creating opportunities for others. But as it pertains to my relationship with Cub, Pastor Jeff, I know we're doing the kid thing or something, right? Yes. And then obviously Lisa. I think one of the most important things for me is what Pastor Jeff just stated, is that this work is not easy. This work is not easy. Between me and Lisa, just last year, we did probably 20-something funerals, including children. This work is not easy, right? It takes a special individual to have to deal with this on a day-to-day basis, all the while knowing how much you're impacting other people's lives. It's not just your own. And so as it pertains to my relationships with these guys, I know it won't change. It's only going to be better, right? I get a phone call from Lisa. She'll cuss me out every now and then, and we won't talk for a couple
text message.
Or text, and we won't talk for a couple of weeks, but when you see us together, you would never know that, right? But that's just what you call holding each other accountable, and that's how you continue to move forward, truthfully, respectfully. And Lord knows I will get a call from Mike too. You need to call me. So, he has called me, so. But that's how you continue. I wouldn't change nothing.
I want to touch on it. I know we're here at the Northside Cub, but we push for peace. I believe, but maybe you and Mike can talk about this. You expanded to other Cub locations, and so do you want to just address that? If you can name them, do it. But if not, I'd just love to.
I'm there every day, so I know.
Yeah,
we had Cub North, we had Cub Uptown, we had Cub Minnehaha, Cub Midway, and Cub Fayetteville. So we have 2 locations in St. Paul. We have one in Uptown. We have this one, and we have 2 and 3 in Minneapolis. This one, Uptown and Minnehaha. And everything that we implemented here, we implemented there. We do the same things over there in those different communities. And we incorporate organizations within those communities to be a part of it, especially like, say, the Fayetteville location off of Clarence. It's a huge Hmong population over there. So we reached out to the Hmong Council. They send their little organizations. And so when we do things over there, they're a part of that. You know what I mean? Again, our objective was to tie these locations into those different communities. And I'm not one to brag, but I think we're going to be a bad job.
And I think that also Kelly Brandis is our director of loss prevention for Cub. And, it's been a big change for him in his career. Kelly's been, multiple decades in this industry. And then to start to work with We Push for Peace and Mother's Love and Pastor Jeff's organization was a big change for him, and how our LPT typically works with uniform security or off-duty police departments, and to bring this new approach to policing into doing business. It's a big growth for Kelly, and our district manager is Chris Burston, who has this district has done a great job with that, and our store directors. It's a big change for them to be able to bring community in and really solve. But I think we've here again, it's the continued education and training and development of what we're doing, what our objectives are, what is work, and when something happens, we take care of the immediate situation. Then all of us and our teams, respective teams, get together and study what took place, where we need to make adjustments. We make those adjustments and move forward.
For me, I have perfect hope for two things. First is that we would continue to create space for more leaders as they begin to emerge on our north side, to take their place at the table and to participate in ways that bring more life and growth to our community. And the second is, my hope is that others who fly at perhaps a different altitude than we do might take a hard look at what we're doing with the idea of what it would take to do this someplace else.
Can I say this before, because I want to make sure that the public knows we are not acting as if we're always perfect in this partnership. But what we are a group of people who, whatever mistakes may happen, we don't give up on the plan, and we don't give up on each other. So we just work, we come back to the table to make it stronger, make it better, but we don't give up on the people that we bring into this space or any other Cub Food space to work. So whatever issues may come up, we just don't scrap the plan. We just work together to make it better every time.
Well, really on that note, thank you. I think one, thanking our panelists, give a little round of applause for sharing your insights, for all the work that you've been doing with the partnership in each of your organizations, and really thanking you in the audience as well, both from your interest and engagement, the questions, and hopefully being able to take what you've learned today into the spaces and the communities in which you live and work, and hopefully apply this. So thank you all. This is wonderful. We'll wrap up and may stretch our legs a little bit since we've been sitting, but thank you so much.
Yeah, and that is when you were talking about Mike, you had the support and the affirmation, I guess, of our local leaders. One day, and I guess it was last fall, I can't remember exactly when, I ran over to get a couple of things that I needed at the grocery store. I thought, what's going on here? The lights, the cameras, well, wasn't it Governor Walz coming to get his COVID shot at this community center? I think that should be said and reported. It said volumes to me. I congratulate you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Governor Walz has been a strong supporter of all of us and all of our organizations. And that was our honor to be able to give Governor Walz and Governor Plenty their booster shots. So thank you. Thank you for mentioning that.
Well, thank you all.
Great. Thank you.